So let's talk about types of hackers. There are three main types of hackers. Those are white hat hacker, black hat hacker, and grey hat hacker. So let's talk about this white hat hacker. These white hat hackers focuses on security and finding vulnerabilities of an organization or a network. So these white hat hackers are responsible for defending side. They find the vulnerabilities and report to an organization or to an administration. And black hat hacker focuses on finding vulnerabilities and exploit them, and finally they tend to do damage to an organization. So these guys will find the vulnerabilities on the system or a network and exploit them, and they finally do some damage to the organization. So these guys take an advantage of an vulnerability and they will exploit them. So you do not need to be black hat hacker, just you need to find the vulnerabilities and you need to report them just like a good guys. And these white hat hackers does not take an advantage of an vulnerability, and they just simply report to an organization. And the third category is grey hat hacker. These grey hat hackers work sometimes as a white hat and black hat according to situation. Suppose if they are working for a company, they will act as a white hat, but they want to do the damage to the black hat, they will act as a black hat. So it depends upon the situation. So let's talk about this vulnerability exploits payloads. So vulnerability, the flaw or misconfiguration of a software is called vulnerability. So this vulnerability rises when there is a no proper coding or a poor coding application, and this misconfiguration or flaw is called vulnerability, and this was identified by the hacker. And the exploit means the way hacker takes advantage of vulnerability is called exploit. So the hacker found out that there is a vulnerability of a buffer overflow attack or a SMB vulnerability or any network protocol vulnerability. So the hacker writes the exploit to take advantage of this vulnerability. So after exploiting, the hacker gets access to the terminal or command prompt or the system and control it. So this is general definition of the payload. This is not an exact definition, but in general hacker gets a reverse shell or a command prompt of the system, and hacker controls that system using the terminal or command prompt. In general case, it is set as a payload. So let me compare these three to a real world scenario. Suppose think you are a thief and there is a bank and you need to rob that, right? Of course you will choose the night time because there will be no one, and you found that there is a door which is very weak, and you can just simply use some tools and you can take advantage of that weak door. That is called vulnerability. That weak door is called vulnerability, and the exploit is you are using some tools to exploit that weak door, to break that weak door. So the process of breaking is called exploiting, and the payload is, of course, you get money from the bank, and the money is called payload. So hacker gets access to terminal. In this case, our bank robber gets money from the bank. That is useful from the victim or an organization. In our real world example, from the bank, the money is called payload, right? Or you can simply say the bag which the robber carries is called a payload. Let's talk about this red blue teams. So red team people mainly focuses on offensive pen testing and try to hack into as many systems as possible with the permission of organization. So these are like black hat hackers, but they have the permission of an organization and they do the offensive pen testing and try to exploit as many systems as possible. The difference between these and black hat hackers are these red team people have the permission of organization and they can revert back to the situation where there is no pen testing performed. So when coming to the blue team focuses on improving security by patching vulnerabilities, updating software, and make sure that security mechanisms are implemented and functioning correctly. It means that blue team people work on the defense side. They patch the vulnerabilities and they make sure that all the softwares are up to date, and they will implement some security mechanisms like firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and etc. So after these both teams have performed their work, it takes generally more than normal pen test. This red teaming and blue teaming operations normally takes more than a pen testing time. It takes generally 4 or 5 weeks, and after those 4 or 5 weeks, these red team people and blue team people gather together and they will suggest each other what techniques need to be implemented to improve the security of an organization. These red team people advise the blue team people on how to patch this vulnerability and how to identify, how to secure from this identify vulnerability they have identified. So in that way, the red team and blue team people together improve the security of an organization. So let's talk about this privileges and escalation. Privileges means certain permissions of user on certain files and folders. So if I'm working in a company as a normal employee, I have some certain privileges. I can access to some files and folders, but I don't have access to every files and folders that administrator have. That means there are some secret files or like important files that need to be secured from normal employee. And what these administrator does is they will assign certain permissions for an user of certain files and folders. So beyond that, I cannot access any other files and folders. And this escalating those permissions to root or administrator is called privilege escalation. So I am an employee, and if I want to become a root or administrator, I find some misconfiguration in services or some other binaries, and then I will leverage those permissions, leverage those services, and gain the root or administrator user. So escalating the permissions from normal user to administrator user or root user is called privilege escalation. So with the root user access, I can do whatever I want to do, and I can have access to every files and folders on the system or on the network. Denial of service means sending huge number of packets from one system to another computer is called denial of service. So normally this another computer is a web server running on somewhere on the world and running a website, and what attacker does is he will send a huge number of packets from their system to the web server. So web server cannot handle those many requests, and what it does is it will crashes. That's called denial of service. And sometimes even if you say the website Amazon, even in the big billion days, you can see that Amazon website is slow or crashed. It's because a lot of traffic is coming to the server, and if this attack is performed by many computers, then it's called distributed denial of service. That means here normal denial of service contains only sending huge packets from one computer, but if it is performed from many other computers, then it is called distributed denial of service. So these black hat hackers combinedly will do the distributed denial of service against some particular organization or a web server. So the main intention is to crash the web server and make sure that that website is not available for some people. So now in this video we will be talking about this buffer overflow attack. When the application does not handle the input data correctly, data may overflow into memory regions like stack, and the application gets crashed. So this application have some input. Of course every application have some input like a file input or a user input, and whenever the application does not handle data correctly, so if the application takes the 30 alphabets as an input, and if we send the 50 alphabets, then application should handle correctly. If it does not handle correctly, that extra 20 characters may overflow into the memory regions like stack, and the application gets crashed. And attackers can control instruction pointer. This is very important, and this instruction pointer points to the next instruction to be executed. And what this attacker does is attacker overflows the application with the data, and within the data the instruction pointer get also overflow. So attackers can precisely override this instruction pointer to point out to their own code. So when they are executing, they will send a buffer and in which the instruction pointer gets overflowed by the address pointed to their own code. Attackers also send their own code they make sure that instruction pointer is pointing to their own code and then executes the exploit or script. Then attackers gets the reversal or bind shell according to the code they have written. So this is all about the buffer overflow attack. We will see in the separate section for the buffer overflow attacks. So we will see some of the viruses and its types. Generally these virus categories are divided according to their behavior. Generally these are come under the malware, but from the functionality perspective these are divided into some few types. I am going to explain these three types in this video: virus, worm and ransomware. Virus grows itself or it affects only one computer that is running on one system. So it is like offline virus, it affects only the one computer that is running on that system. If I run this virus on my system and only my computer gets affected, but that's not in the case of the worm. Worm infects all the computers running on the same network. So if my company has 100 computers running on the same network, and if one computer is affected by worm, then it will infect all the computers running on the same network. It will infect all the 100 computers within short amount of time, and it will create a botnet scenario, like attacker executes a command and this worm executes that command in all the computers running on the same network. So this ransomware is different from the virus and worm, and this ransomware is more dangerous because it encrypts all the files and folders of the user, and the user have to pay to recover them. So what this ransomware does is it will encrypt every file and folder in the file system, and then it will display a command prompt like interface telling that you have to pay to the attacker to recover them. So attacker will say that we will crack the password and we will give the correct key, and if you enter the correct key then ransomware will decrypt all the files. But in general these ransomwares are written in such a way that it will only encrypts one way, so we cannot decrypt all the files and folders to the normal state. But the attackers say that we have some advanced algorithms, and since we have written ransomware, we do also have the decryption algorithm, so you need to pay us. In 99% cases, even if user pay them, the hackers will not send the key, or the ransomware fails to decrypt, because it's only one way encryption. There is no decryption in most 99% of the cases. That's why whenever you hit by a ransomware, it's better not to pay them. It's better to reinstall the OS. That's the efficient way. So these are the virus, worm and ransomware we have learned. Virus just affects only one computer, and worm infects all the computers on the same network, and ransomware just encrypts everything in the computer.